Welcome to this deep dive, presented right here on the F1 Blog's YouTube channel. We've pulled together quite a bit of material today, articles, some transcripts, all focusing on Aston Martin.
Yeah, there's certainly been a lot happening around the team lately.
Absolutely. So our mission today is really to cut through some of the noise, pull out the key insights, and give you a clear picture of what's actually going on with the green cars right now.
Sounds good. We'll connect the dots, basically. From Alonso's latest achievement to the car's performance, Newey's arrival, and, well, the Stroll situation.
Exactly. Let's jump right in.
Okay. Well, I think what's really striking when you look at all this stuff together is this contrast, you know? You've got these clear high points, real progress, but then also some, let's say, public complexities playing out.
Yeah, definitely. Let's start with a high point then, Fernando Alonso.
Right. The longevity is just staggering.
So the big news out of the Spanish Grand Prix for him wasn't to win, but it was still pretty significant, wasn't it? He finally got his first points of 2025. Ninth place, 2 points.
And 2 points might sound small, but historically, it's huge. The sources we looked at confirm it. Those points made him the first driver ever to score points in 21 different Formula One seasons.
21. Just say that again. 21 seasons.
I know. It feels like one of those records that might just stand for a very, very long time.
And the consistency is key here, right?
Mhm.
The sources mention his only non-scoring year was way back in 2001, his debut. Since 2003 with Renault, he's just been scoring.
Pretty much year in, year out, through different teams, different regs, and apparently his focus in Spain, according to one article, was really just putting on a good show for the home fans in Montmelo.
Oh, he seemed to find something in qualifying. Q3 again, third race in a row.
Which the sources suggest was maybe even a bit better than the team expected for that particular track. Shows they can, or maybe he can, still pull something out.
So how did the race itself play out for him? He finished 10th on the road.
Yeah, 10th on track, but then got bumped up to 9th. And into those points because Max Verstappen had that penalty.
Ah, okay. So history made, 21 seasons sealed. But Alonso himself wasn't exactly ecstatic with P9.
No, apparently not. The reports say he described it as not a race to remember, something like that, even with that huge milestone attached.
Which tells you a lot about that elite driver mindset, doesn't it?
Absolutely. For him, the record is nice, maybe, but it's always about the performance right now, the position on track, the next 10th.
It's that relentless drive. The sources mention his history, the championships, obviously, but
Yeah.
also seasons like 2012.
Oh, yeah, 2012 with Ferrari, dragging that car to 278 points, almost winning the title. That kind of maximizing performance, he's still showing flashes of that, even now after his comeback.
Incredible. And that drive, that performance, it links directly to the team situation, doesn't it? Because Aston Martin, the AMR 25, the start of 2025 was tough.
Yeah, it really was. Often outside the points, struggling for pace. Stroll did get some points early on Australia, China, the U.S. sprint, I thought.
Right, but the consistency just wasn't there.
No. And it seemed like they were carrying over some of the problems from the AMR 24, especially that poor performance in low-speed corners.
But then, Imola happened. The updates arrived.
Exactly. And this is where the sources really dig in. Those updates brought to Imola seem to be a bit of a turning point.
A tangible impact. You could see it on track.
It certainly looks that way.
Yeah.
The evidence stacks up. Alonso qualifying P5 in Imola before that safety car messed things up. Then Monaco, good qualifying pace again before the engine issue stopped him.
And then Spain, like we said.
Yeah.
Q3 and points on a track they weren't necessarily banking on being strong at.
Right. And I saw some of that analysis, I think it was on F1 blogs, comparing the updated car
Yeah.
against Leclerc's Ferrari, for instance.
Where did that show?
It suggested the Aston was actually pretty competitive in the corners, making up time they might have been losing on the straights.
Okay, interesting trade-off.
Yeah, and compared to some of the midfield rivals, the gap seemed smaller, and crucially, better traction out of the slow corners.
So directly addressing that weakness we mentioned.
Precisely. The updates look like they specifically targeted and improved that low-speed performance. It allows them to get the power down better, maybe even overtake using traction, like toast a corner in Imola or turn 5 in Barcelona was mentioned.
Okay, so positive signs from the engineering side. They can develop the car, but the elephant in the room, or perhaps the genius in the room, Adrian Newey.
Yeah. The sources are full of talk about Newey, and the big question everyone's asking is, when does his influence really start to show?
Right, because there's the potential, and then there's the immediate reality.
Exactly. And Andy Cowell, the team principal, was quoted talking about him, described Newey as someone who provokes people, sets very high minimums, demanding, basically.
And didn't Cowell quote Newey saying it might take a while, like 2 years?
Yeah, he did. Mention Newey suggesting it could be 2 years for the really significant stuff. But Cowell also added that everyone at the factory is fired up to, prove him wrong, speed things up.
Uh-huh. That's a great dynamic. The legend sets the bar high, challenges the team.
Definitely. Now, the sources are clear. Newey didn't design the Imola updates. They were already baked in. But there's speculation he might already be having an influence on car configuration.
Configuration, not design. Why is that distinction important?
It's really key. Because Aston Martin historically sometimes struggled to make the simulation data translate perfectly to the track. The car could be tricky, didn't always behave as expected.
Right, understanding the car they actually have.
Exactly. And Newey isn't just a designer. He's known for his deep understanding of how to set up a car, how to configure it to work optimally. So he could potentially help them unlock performance from the current car even before he designs new bits.
Ah, I see. So it's about making what they have work better right now.
Potentially, yes. That F1 blog's analysis pointed to the Spanish GP setup as maybe an early example. They went for really high downforce.
Which means slower on the straights.
Yeah, sacrifice straight-line speed for cornering grip and tire management. On a high-degradation track like Barcelona, it was described as potentially brave.
A strategy may be enabled by having someone like Newey giving them confidence.
That's the suggestion. Confidence in finding performance that way, plus knowing Alonso can often make overtakes work even without a huge DRS advantage. Cowell also talked about Newey's experience, his competitiveness, that unique mentality focused purely on the fastest solution, however unconventional.
So it's not just about the 2026 car, it's about his whole philosophy rubbing off on the team now.
That's what Cowell seemed to stress, building a winning culture for the long haul, especially for the 26 rules. It's about the whole team learning his approach. There was even that little detail about his wife saying he goes into a design trance, intense focus.
Wow. That's commitment.
It really is. So the picture here is updates show progress, yes. But the real buzz, the real potential game changer is maximizing Newey's influence, his philosophy, his wisdom, not just his drawings for the future, especially 2026.
Okay, so Alonso's record, team improving, Newey's potential. But now we need to shift gears to something the sources paint as, well, much less straightforward. The situation with Lance Stroll.
Yeah, this is where things get murky. Based on the reporting we've seen. Officially, the reason Stroll missed the Spanish GP was a flare-up of that wrist injury from before the 2023 season. He had surgery in Barcelona, apparently.
And the team sounded hopeful he'd be back for Canada, his home race, which, conveniently, would avoid any reserve driver clashes with Le Mans.
That was the official line, yes. But then you have these other reports and speculations swirling around, complicating things. The BBC report, cited in the sources we looked at, alleged an outburst from Stroll after qualifying.
An outburst? What kind?
Apparently hitting furniture, speaking disrespectfully to team members. This was supposedly after he got knocked out in Q2, quite a bit slower than Alonso.
Okay, that's quite an allegation. What did Aston Martin say about that?
Well, a team spokesperson, quoted by the BBC, acknowledged Stroll was disgusted after quali, which is maybe understandable, but they explicitly stated the wrist issue and the alleged incident were not related.
Not related, okay. And Mike Crack, the team boss.
He apparently dismissed the outburst story as just paddock gossip, so downplaying it.
So denying a link between the injury and the alleged outburst and playing down the outburst itself. But then there's the whole FIA weigh-in situation after qualifying. That adds another layer, doesn't it?
It really does. And this is where the sources talk about a lack of clarity, even oscurantismo, obscurity in the communication. The official FIA document, it lays out a specific sequence.
Okay, what does it say? Stroll had to go to the scales after Q2.
Yes, standard procedure, go directly to the FIA scales. But video showed him leaving the garage out the back, not going via the pit lane to the scales as required.
And he was summoned for that.
He was, but initially couldn't attend the hearing due to a medical condition. The hearing was postponed to Sunday morning. A team rep went instead.
And they submitted evidence.
A medical report. A medical report, yes, and crucially, a letter from Stroll himself.
What did Stroll's letter say was the reason for missing the weigh-in?
According to the FIA document summarizing his letter, he claimed he missed it because he was in great pain and needed urgent medical attention behind the garage.
Urgent attention?
Okay.
And then what?
His letter stated that after getting this urgent attention, he then went to the scales, then to the media pen for interviews, and then went back to the medical center for more evaluation. That's when rest was recommended, leading to his withdrawal. The medical report confirmed a condition in his right wrist and hand needing treatment and backed up the non-driving recommendation.
That's a very specific timeline presented to the stewards. But the sources we're looking at raise questions about it, right?
Right.
Based on observations.
Exactly. That's where the journalist in the F1 logs piece highlights the perceived obscurity. They question, for instance, why the pain would become so urgent right after a short quali session with only a few push laps. It seems abrupt.
And what about video from the garage before he left?
Well, the sources note that what little footage was seen before the feed cut didn't seem to show anyone in immediate distress or urgency. Stroll looked like he was just doing the usual post-session things before heading out the back.
Okay, but the most striking part seems to be the media pen. He went there after supposedly needing urgent medical attention.
Yes, according to his own timeline submitted to the FIA. And this is where it gets really hard to reconcile, according to the journalist. There are photos from the media pen.
And what do they show?
They show Stroll looking, well, relatively calm. In one picture, he's crossing his arms. You can see his left hand clearly, no bandage. Another, he's touching his face. The point made is that there were no obvious visual signs backing up the description of someone who moments before needed urgent attention for great pain.
So the visual evidence from the media pen seems to clash with the narrative of intense, urgent pain requiring immediate attention just before.
It certainly makes it difficult to square the circle. The journalist basically says, you have the official injury story, you have the alleged outburst report, which the team downplays, you have the specific timeline given to the FIA involving urgent pain, and then you have visuals that don't seem to fully align with that urgent pain narrative.
So multiple narratives, inconsistencies.
Yeah.
It's hard to know what really happened.
Exactly. The conclusion from the sources analyzing this is that the combination of the alleged incident, the medical issue, the official timeline, and the visual evidence creates confusion and leads, inevitably, to speculation. It's just not a clear picture.
Wow. Okay, definitely a complex situation there.
Yeah.
So let's try and pull all these different threads. The Alonso, the car, Newey, Stroll together. What's the overall picture these sources paint of Aston Martin right now?
I think it's definitely multifaceted. You see clear signs of progress, you know, technical improvement with the updates, moving away from those early season woes, especially the low speed stuff. That seems real.
Right. And then the Newey factor looms large.
Huge anticipation there. Both internal and external pressure, probably. Not just for future car designs, but maybe even helping them understand and optimize what they have now. That's a big hope.
Plus, Alonso's still performing at an incredibly high level, breaking records.
Absolutely. He's still a massive asset, consistently delivering. But alongside all that positive momentum and star power, you've got these persistent questions around Lance Stroll.
His performance relative to Fernando, and now this whole confusing situation around the Spanish GP withdrawal.
Yeah, the injury timing, the conflicting accounts. It just adds a layer of uncertainty. So progress mixed with complexity, I'd say.
So looking at all this, why does this deep dive matter to you, our listener? What's the takeaway here?
Well, I think it really underscores that success in Formula One isn't just one thing. It's not just the car or just the driver. It's this incredibly complex mix.
Technical development, getting updates right,